Thanks, Kate. Thanks to the Reed team for giving us the opportunity, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to hear the Caspin Resources story. The first time that we've presented our company to you, and it's been a thrill to be able to bring a relatively fresh and new story to you today. And we're going to be talking about tin and gold. So a brief introduction to the company. For those that aren't familiar, Justin Tremaine is our chairman. You might be familiar with him. He's the managing director of Yarawindah Gold. I'm a geologist. I've been in this industry now for 30 years, about 20 of which has been in the junior exploration sector, still here and surviving. John Horonsky is one of the preeminent geologists in Australia, Order of Australia Medal, in fact, for his services to the mining industry. So needless to say, he has been there and done that. And Steve Wood is a very highly sought after company secretary, and he and I have been working together for now 15 years. Fairly modest valuation there, but you can see there's been a little slight tick up in our share price in recent weeks, and that's really what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to New South Wales. Both myself and Ollie following me are going to talk about why you need tin in your portfolio. We're in a very prolific tin producing region, but it is also a gold producing region as well, and that's adding a little bit of spice to the Caspin story. So why do you need tin in your portfolio? And the reason is because you are using it every day. This chart here, thanks to Sean Russo for reminding me of it not so long ago, is a chart of the impact of electrification on the metals market around the world, and tin is set to benefit greater than any other metal out there in the commodity space. So really valuable. And the reason for this is through electrification. For those that aren't familiar, tin is used as the primary ingredient of solder, and as we all know, that holds electronic circuitry together. And so with growing electrification, whether that be in EVs, solar panel arrays, AI data centres, and Grady talked about that this morning, about how do you play the AI space, you need to be in tin. So very important. The big news of just recently is the announcement of our maiden resource that we call Kelpie at Bygoo. A fairly modest but substantial resource number that demonstrates that we are on the pathway to a viable tin project. It's really constrained at the moment by drilling. That's why it's kind of in three parts. Not a lot of drilling in some of the gaps between the three ore blocks there. So plenty of room to grow. This is a first step in what will become a very large tin deposit. It averages 0.5%, which is very economic in an open pit mining scenario. They're optimised shells, so a lot of people aren't actually even familiar with what a good tin grade is. Well, we've taken that out of the equation. We've demonstrated that at 0.5% is very economic. In fact, the optimised tin shell went to the bottom of the resource model at 190 metres, which means there is room for growth at depth, but that's not our initial focus. The main focus is filling some of those gaps and drilling along strike. And that is represented by the light pink shade that you can see there. That is our exploration target. Exploration target, 12 to 20 million tonnes at about the same sort of resource grade. So we think there is reasonable potential to increase this resource 2 to 3 times. But that is actually only part of the story again. The Kelpie Deposit, we've just plotted it on a geology map there, projected its surface, is actually part of a very large mineralised area, and that's demonstrated by a plethora of historical workings. Our geology team, Ben, who's here in the audience and with us on the booth, has been all over this area, done all this sampling, and you can see there is quite significant tin grades associated with those workings up to 2,000 metres away from the Kelpie deposit. But mineralisation is also open along strike, not so much in the way of workings there, but that is because it is under very shallow cover. So it would have been obscured to the old timers back in the day, but there is very good prospects for extending that mineralisation along strike where there has been no drilling. A fantastic opportunity. But let's just zoom out a fraction more. The inset box you can see on the geology map on the right, that white little box, represents the scale that we were just looking at. And you will see that the prospective granite horizon of the Ardlethan granite extends for over 20 kilometres through our project area, most of which has not been drilled, but we know it's mineralised because 5 kilometres to the south is the historic Ardlethan Mine. That was mined for over 20 years by Aberfoyle until essentially the tin price collapsed. I could do a talk about what happened to the tin price back in the 60s, 70s and 80s. Almost shut down overnight when the tin price collapsed, and has more or less been stagnant ever since. There's been very little exploration work done in this project area since the 1980s. So very good opportunities to not only extend the Kelpie resource, but find further deposits either nearby or along strike along that granite margin. Or a litter of Kelpies, as Barry Fitzgerald alluded to the other day. I kind of like that. So what are the other things we're doing? Metallurgy is a key component of understanding or is another fundamental step to demonstrating a viable project. We've actually been able to just pan cassiterite. Cassiterite is the primary economic tin mineral. It's very dense and makes it very easy for separation. So we don't anticipate any issues with metallurgy, but we're still doing the work nonetheless to be able to quantify that and explain that to the market. We are also doing ore sorting because of that the density contrast between cassiterite and the gangue minerals. These sort of tin deposits do lend themselves to ore sorting, and I encourage you to pay attention to what Ollie is going to tell you about ore sorting following me. So what does this mean? What's the value proposition? Well, ladies and gentlemen, what we are working towards is producing the highest grade open pit mine in Australia. Kelpie, the size of the bubbles in that chart there represent the size of total contained tin in resources. The ASX tin universe is quite small. There's only a handful of players. We've put on that chart all those ASX players, plus First Tin, who are LSE listed, but at least they also have a project here in New South Wales, so it's a reasonable comparison. We, through our upcoming drill programs, intend to grow that little bubble and shift it northwards along the resource tonnage axis while maintaining that very high grade for open pit scenario, which I think you'll agree we should have reasonable confidence in achieving those goals. But that's only part of the story. We've added a little interesting gold project into the mix just recently. This was only announced on Monday, so you are the first audience that I've talked to about this acquisition. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe this is one of the most interesting greenfields gold projects in the country today. And it's not out in the far-flung remote regions of the desert. It's right on the doorstep of a prolific gold-producing region. A fantastic bit of work by some private entrepreneurs have brought this project up to drill readiness stage. And that will be essentially what we are going to do next. We've got an option on this project. It could be another discovery in a very short period of time. It was recognised as being a similar sort of structural setting to, in this case, the Hemi deposit. The Weethalle granite is this unusual circular granite with some interesting structural features around it. There is some historical mining at Weethalle, the Yarawindah workings, which occur in the pressure shadow of the Weethalle granite. You may have heard that term before. Sort of small-scale mining going back to the 1930s, but there's a bit of an example of the sort of material that was mined, very high grade, up to 5 ounce per tonne. Now, I want you to pay attention. That's sort of quartz and sulphide style of mineralisation. The key there is that it lends itself to induced polarisation geophysical techniques, or IP. Sulphides are chargeable with an electric current, whereas quartz is a resistor. So you can map this in terms of chargeability and resistivity. Now, originally the owners ran the IP over the Yarawindah workings, looking for extensions to those mine workings, like every other previous explorer had done. Kind of a modest anomaly there on the top right. They were actually encouraged by the fact that it kind of grew at depth, which is encouraging. But as they expanded that survey out, what they found was a very high chargeability anomaly about 500 metres to the east. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is really interesting because they then followed that up with some soil geochemistry using pathfinder elements. What's mapped on the figure there is arsenic. It's a common pathfinder in intrusive-related gold systems. There's other elements as well, tungsten and lead that were also anomalous. That was confirmed with some chemical gold assays that up to 59 ppb, very anomalous gold results, that coincide with that IP anomaly. And you can see that it's kind of in a bit of an arcuate shape. And what we think that represents, it's about 2 kilometres diameter, is an intrusive-like or pencil-like intrusion at depth underneath that anomaly. So whilst everybody was been concentrating on the Yarawindah workings and drilling extensions to that, that was a furphy. We think that was the distal vein system, the periphery vein system, to the main intrusive complex that is represented by that anomaly. And the real beauty about that, ladies and gentlemen, is that there is not a single drill hole in that anomaly. So, like I said, it is pretty much drill ready. So it's an option deal for us. We're going to spend $200,000 to do a small program, about 1,200 metres of drilling. I should have said that anomaly is between 50 and 200 metres at depth. So we can drill that with RC drilling very simply. And the beauty of it is that it's accessible now. All the permitting is in place, land access agreements and environmental permitting, and it's ready to go. And we've got the rig booked, and it's scheduled to start in late October, so only a short time away. And it fits in beautifully with all the things that are going on. It's a very busy 6 months for Caspin ahead. We've got the metallurgy coming up in 2 parts. The ore sorting results will probably come through first. They'll be soon, followed by gravity separation metallurgy to follow. At about the same time, we're going to be drilling the Weethalle target, a very exciting greenfields gold target at what is a great time to be drilling for gold. And then that leads into some further development on the exploration targets at Bygoo and a fairly extensive drill program at Kelpie, looking for further extensions and some other reconnaissance type targets elsewhere in the project area. Multiple opportunities for discovery with Caspin over the next 6 months. So Kate, I think I'll leave it there.